بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. صلى الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجه الكريم. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue with our discussion on some of the detailed points that we wanted to discuss about or surrounding Al-Aqidah Al-Tahawiyya. So yesterday we mentioned some of the scholars from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah among the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya, and then we mentioned some of the references or those scholars who are taken as references among Al-Wahhabiyya, who call themselves as Salafiyya. And I want to, from the outset, because I want to be careful with the way I talk. And while talking and being careful, I also want to be honest. So there's a balance here that I'm trying to do that I need all of us to understand. Our objective is to assist one another in learning the truth. So we have to have a level of maturity in that. So though I disagree, or the scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah disagree with other factions or Islamic factions, and I mentioned that to you earlier, its meaning, we still have to have some manners and behaviors when dealing with people in general, right? That's a rule. Just because I disagree with you does not give me the right to disrespect you or to belittle you or to, or to speak to you or deal with you in any way that is not befitting of the characteristics of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even in the discussion or in the debate or in the disagreement, I must do that with ihsan. I must do it in a way that is excellent, befitting, right? So if I must say it, I try my best to find the most befitting words to convey the point. Excuse me 1 second. So when I say Al-Wahhabiyya, and I mentioned it, but I want to make it because I know there are people who are Salafi. They call themselves Salafi, or they follow the Salafiyya methodology. So they may get offended when they hear the word Wahhabiyya. When I say the word Wahhabiyya, I mean just what you mean. I'm talking about the creed that you say you're upon. And that creed, historically, according to books of scholars whom you say you follow or you narrate their books, they said that about themselves as well. So there are some Sunnis who have bad manners, but they're on the truth. They're right, but their manners are in the basement, as we say in the hood. They're right, but their manners are in the basement. So even though they're right, their manners override the truth what they're saying. And we can't make that mistake. And we could make it, but that's not a smart thing to do. And so I want you to understand when I say Al-Wahhabiyya, I'm not attacking you. I'm mentioning the issue as it is, and we're going to discuss the issue. So don't get distracted by that. Pay attention to what I'm actually saying. But for me, when I hear the term as-Salafiyya, I want to make sure that I'm clear in who and what I'm talking about. So I don't mix the term in terms of giving a false impression of what I'm talking about. So I want you to know exactly what I'm talking about. Is that clear for everyone? I just wanted to make sure we all understood that. I'm not asking if you agree with me. I'm just asking, do you understand what I'm talking about? Tell you. So we talked about from the side of Al-Wahhabiyya and as-Salafiyya, they have referent scholars who they refer to. And among them was Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, Ibn Abi al-Iz al-Hanafi, among the earlier scholars, and we even go further back to Imam al-Barbahari. All of them are those scholars who are they refer to. Among the Hanabila, because most of them were all Hanbalis, except Ibn Abi al-Iz. But among the Hanabila were those scholars who were before Ibn Taymiyyah, who wrote against the ideas of the likes of Barbahari and those who had the similar ideology, but they were Ahl Sunnah, following the way of the Ash'ariyah and the Maturidiyah. Among those scholars was one that's going to become important in our discussion prior to Ibn Taymiyyah, was the great Imam, Al-Hanbali Imam Abdul Rahman ibn Jawzi. So I wanted to read a little about him in his biography in The Reliance of the Traveler, page 1021, and biographical entry or note X12. So we're in Reliance for right now. Go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, Abdul Rahman ibn Jawzi is Abdul Rahman ibn Ali ibn Muhammad al-Jawzi, born in Baghdad in 508, a Hanbali Imam and one of the greatest scholars of his age in history and hadith. He authored nearly 300 works in the sciences of hadith, Arabic grammar, Quranic exegesis, history, Sufism, physiognomy, medicine, and biographies of famous Muslims. He is sometimes confused with Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, whom he is not related to, though the former's name, literally, son of the superintendent of the Jawziyah, was derived from the name of the Jawziyah school founded by a grandson of Ibn al-Jawziyah in Damascus.
Ibn al
I'm sorry. Derived from the name of the Jawziyah school founded by a grandson of Ibn al-Jawzi in Damascus, where Ibn Qayyim's father worked. Ibn al-Jawzi died in Baghdad in 597.
So Ibn Jawzi, he falls between the time of Imam al-Ghazali and Sheikh Fakhruddin al-Razi, right? And he was during the time of Imam al-Razi, but after the time of al-Ghazali. So he was in Baghdad, in the middle of two great giants of Ahl Sunnah. Before him, Imam al-Ghazali, And during his time, Fakhruddin Al-Razi, who was a well-known scholar of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So Ibn al-Jawzi would tell us what some of the Hanabila in Baghdad actually believed. And he wrote a book, and inshallah we'll talk about it, Daf'u Shubha Tashbih, in which he mentioned these ideas that were mentioned by Ibn Taymiyyah prior to Ibn Taymiyyah. He wasn't talking about Ibn Taymiyyah, he was talking about the early Mujassima and Mushabbiha from the Hanabila. He wrote against them. And his book is even translated in English. And we'll have that discussion later. But I wanted to add Ibn Jawzi among the Hanabila who had the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And he is considered among the Fudala of the Hanabila that was mentioned by Tajuddin as-Subki. Today, I wanted to introduce you to some of the relied upon commentaries of Al-Aqidah, Shuruh of Al-Aqidah Tahawiyya, so you can get some reference points to the discussion. And I wanted to center this reference around a major point, and I would say it is the major difference that cannot be reconciled between Ahl-Sunnah among the Ash'ariyah and Maturidiyya and Al-Wahhabiyya Salafiyya. There's no way to solve this issue. You cannot have it both ways. One's right, one's wrong. And so this is an issue that we can't walk away from. There are some issues where there's a permissible disagreement. And then there are other issues where disagreement is opposite and it can't work. This is one of them. So I want to make it clear, and then we'll have the discussion. If everyone has all these figures, it's going to be easy to trace this. So our discussion goes to page number 66 in our book, The Creed of Islam. So if we go to page 66, and we're going to read the bold first, then we'll go back and read the commentary because it's significant. So let's read what Imam Al-Tahawi said himself. Go ahead, Bismillah. Al-Fatiha, Imam Al-Tahawi, Al-Fatiha. Now,
We're starting at the top.
just the bold for right now, because we want to highlight what Imam Al-Tahawi said.
Allah, Ta'ala, Almighty and Majestic, is exalted far above having limits, ends, constituent parts, limbs, and instruments. The six directions do not enclose him, as they do all originated things.
All right. So here, Imam Al-Tahawi says, Ta'ala Allah عز وجل عن الحدود والغايات والأركان والأعضاء والأدوات لا تهويه الجهات الست كسائر المبتدآت. Right? So he mentions about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah is free from having limits, extreme ends, parts, limbs, organs, or instruments. And then he says that Allah is not enclosed by the six directions, as is the other originated things or creations. So let's read the commentary of Imam Al-Ghaznawi about these 2 points.
A limit is the characteristic of something finite, which is constricted and powerless under the dominance of that limit, whereas He, Allah Ta'ala, is a dominator and thus cannot be delimited. An end is an expression of having an extremity. Constituent parts and limbs are the attributes of bodies, and instruments are the bodily implements. The eternal, glorified, and most high is exalted above all such characteristics. The 6 directions do not enclose him as they do all originated things, since he most high negated from himself resemblance to anything in his saying, "There is nothing whatever like unto him." Quran Surah 42, Ayah 11. Moreover, to ascribe directionality and spatiality to him implies the ascription of his similarity to bodies, and to describe him as having directions implies the notion of their enclosing him, and to assert that he exists in a place implies the ascription of his need for that place. All of the aforementioned necessitates that he has an origin and negates his eternality. Directions and places are part of this universe, but he is utterly independent of of the universe and its parts. Moreover, because the 6 directions are created and they are a characteristic of the originated world, they do not apply to Allah Ta'ala, as He is eternal. He existed when there was neither place nor time. Allah existed when there was nothing besides Him. Allah Ta'ala Most High did not exist in directions in pre-eternity, as there were no directions. If He were to become located in one of the directions after creating them, He would have changed from what He was and transformed. But change and transformation are signs of having an origin. Allah Ta'ala is exalted above that.
Mm.
The anthropomorphists, however, adhere to the literal meanings of the sacred texts that ostensibly suggest anthropomorphic notions about Allah Ta'ala. The position of the majority of the early Muslims, Salaf, is to believe in them and consign their interpretation to Allah Ta'ala Most High, while asserting His exaltedness above anthropomorphism, and not to engage in figuratively interpreting them, but rather to believe that whatever Allah Ta'ala Most High intended by them is true. This is the position chosen by Al-Tahawi. May Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him. The position of the majority of the later Muslims, Caliph, is that we figuratively interpret them according to what is befitting Allah Ta'ala Most High's essence and attributes, but without claiming certainty that that is what Allah Ta'ala intended, due to the lack of proof necessitating certainty in the intended meaning. They, for example, say that what is meant by by His Most High's saying, "And He it is who is in the heaven is God, and on the earth God." Quran Surah 43, Ayah 84, is that His divinity is established in them both, not the establishment of His essence. Such an interpretation would be similar to the case where one says, "So and so is a ruler among the Arabs and non-Arabs," and they say what is meant by His saying, "And He is the supreme above His servants," Quran Surah 6, Ayah 18, is that He is above them in supremacy and rank, not physical elevation and place, as there is no self-praise in that, because even a guard can be above his leader in terms of place. The position of the majority of the early Muslims is safer than to proffer an interpretation that may be unintended by Allah Ta'ala, whereas the position of the majority of the later Muslims is more evidential.
All right, so here, Imam Al-Ghaznawi explains the position of Al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya. And that is that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is free of the 6 directions. The 6 directions being above, below, to the right, to the left, in front, or behind. And what they mean by that, as Imam Al-Ghaznawi mentioned, rahimahullah, is that Allah exists without being in a place or any direction. So by negating the 6 directions, which are the directions of all created things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thereby it is known that He exists without being in a place. whenever Al-Sunnati wal-Jama'a, Al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya. Let me clarify what I'm saying so everyone understands. When I use the term Al-Sunnati wal-Jama'a, I mean Al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya and whoever has their same convictions, right? So when I say Al-Sunnah wal-Jama'a, that's what I'm referring to. Al-Asha'ira wal-Maturidiyya and whoever has their same belief, even if they don't say I'm Ash'ari or Maturidi. But if their belief is the same as that belief, then they are Ahl Sunnah. Is this point clear? Tayyib. Now, let it be known that Al-Wahhabiyya, As-Salafiyya, they call themselves Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So when they say Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they are talking about themselves. Al-Wahhabiyya, As-Salafiyya. They do not mean the Ash'aris or the Maturidis. So when you read the term Ahl Sunnah, you need to know who's telling you that. If the Wahhabiyya or Salafiyya say Ahl Sunnah, they're talking about themselves. They don't mean the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, right? When the Ash'ira or Maturidiyya say Ahl Sunnah, they're referring to the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. Now, that's a general position. Now, among the Ash'aris were those who will, in general, include Al-Wahhabiyya, some of them. You will find them. They would say they're Ahl Sunnah, but they're misguided in this. But in general, they're Ahl Sunnah. And likewise, among the Salafis or Wahhabis, you will have among them those who will include the Ash'aris and Maturidis in general under the term Ahl Sunnah. So it exists in both. So for terminology, I just want you to understand what is being said. Because some of us, we'll read Ahl Sunnah, then we get confused because they say they're Ahl Sunnah and they say they're Ahl Sunnah. It all defines how they interpret and understand the word Ahl Sunnah, the title Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So when I'm using it, that's what I mean, Al-Asha'ira wal Maturidiyya. And whoever is on their creed. So when I say Ahl Sunnah, I don't mean Al-Wahhabiyya, As-Salafiyya. I don't consider them Ahl Sunnah, right? Because of their creeds. And likewise, among them are those who don't consider Ash'aris Ahl Sunnah. So that's, once we got that established, that's not a point of contention. It's a point of clarification for terms, right? So the position of the Ash'ira wal Maturidiyya is that Allah exists without a place, that directions do not contain him. When they talk about attributes of Allah in verses of the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, whose apparent literal meaning, when we say literal, we mean that which immediately comes to the mind when you hear a word, right? So that's the literal meaning. Anytime you have a verse or a hadith that literally, the literal meaning entails direction or location or place for Allah, Al-Asha'ira negate that apparent literal meaning as a not the intended meaning. And they do that in compliance with the verse Laysa kamithlihi shay' and other verses that nothing resembles Allah. So for the Ash'aris and Maturidis, what Imam Al-Tahawi is saying is that Allah is not in a direction or many directions. The directions are negated about him, and he is not in a place, no matter where that place is. Allah exists without a place. Is this clear? Any questions about what is said that you don't understand? This is your time to point it. So this was Imam Al-Ghaznawi, who died in the 8th century. Now, the primary reference in explaining the Aqidah of Al-Tahawi was written by who? Quick test. For the Wahhabiyya or Salafiyya, when they want to explain the creed of Al-Tahawi, what is their foremost reference of which they use was written by who? Let's make sure we got the other classes. I'll wait for the answer. So their foremost reference, who would they use? If you're talking to a Wahhabi or a Salafi, right? Who is the reference when they want to talk about the Aqidah of Tahawiyah? Who would be their foremost, earliest reference that they're going to use to mention what they understand that book? Right. Good. Everyone put it. Ibn Abi al-Iz al-Hanafi, right? Ibn Abi al-Iz al-Hanafi, right. So, and he died in the 8th century as well. So he lived at the same time of Imam al-Ghaznawi, right? And he was where? In Damascus, not Barbahari and not Fawzan. Barbahari didn't explain Aqidah Tahawiyah. That was Ibn Abi al-Iz. Barbahari has another book. The creed is the same, but that's not the reference for this book. So Ibn Abi al-Iz, he wrote his explanation, Sharh Aqidah at-Tahawiyah. So this is the main reference for the book. And I don't know how many translations. This is an English translation of his book, right? Published in Saudi Arabia. So you see it, the commentary on the Creed of Al-Tahawi by Ibn Abi al-Iz, right? So it is available, right? And this is the Arabic version. And remember, I told you I always read both books together, so in case we catch mistakes. He goes in the discussion of this point from page 156 to page 162. It's a long discussion, but the best summary of this discussion, and I'm going to mention it, was written by, that's available to you in English, because if I read all this Arabic, it's going to take too long. So what I'm going to do is give you English references, and then I'll just show you in the Arabic books, and I'll just translate it for you to save time, right? This book is Ta'liqat al-Muqtasara ala Matni al-Aqidah al-Tahawiyah. This is by Saleh Fawzan. He's a famous scholar among the Wahhabiyya and Salafiyya. He wrote a commentary on Al-Tahawi, and it is translated in English as well, right? This same section that we mentioned, I'll read from what he said. So we read from Al-Ghaznawi what they say, what Ahl-Sunnah among the Ash'ariyya and Maturidiyya say. I'll read it quick. I'm not as great reader as our reader, but we'll get through this. Endure the pain, right? No, stop. So he mentioned, and this is on page 84 and 85 of his English translation, right? 84 and 85. 84, 85, there's the starting, right? So it's here. I'm going to read it. He says, he is beyond having limits, ends, parts, limbs, and instruments. That's the statement of Imam Al-Tahawi. Fawzan, he comments. He said, this contains a kind of ambiguous brevity. If he means created limits, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends limits and incarnation in any of his creation. If he considered limits to be non-created limits, namely the direction of highness, then this is something confirmed about Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not transcend highness, because that is the truth. So it is not a matter of limits or a matter of created direction. There is ambiguous brevity in ends, ghayat. It can be interpreted correctly or incorrectly. If what is meant by ghayat is wisdom in creating all creations, and that he created them with wisdom, then that is true. However, it should be said wisdom and not en, ghaya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. Quran 51, verse 56. If what is meant by ghaya, which is ends, right, is the need for creations, then yes, it is correct to deny this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create the creation for some need of them, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from need of everyone. Parts, limbs, instruments, there is also ambiguous brevity here. If what is meant by parts, limbs, instruments is the attributes of Allah's being, that, such as the face, hands, then those are true, and it is wrong to deny them. If what is meant is to deny limbs that share similarity with the limbs and instruments of created things, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends that. As relating to dimensions and limbs, in short, it requires further elaboration. First, if what is meant is to deny that Allah's attributes, the attributes of Allah's being, that, such as the face and hands, and other attributes of his being, sifatul that have been confirmed, then it is incorrect. Second, if what is meant, on the other hand, is that Allah transcends having the dimensions, parts, instruments of created things, then yes, Allah transcends that, as none of his creation are like him, rather in his being, his names, and his attributes. To sum up, the language put forth by the author, meaning Imam Al-Tahawi, has an element of ambiguous brevity. Nevertheless, it should be interpreted correctly because he was an adherent of the Sunnah and Jama'ah. Furthermore, he was an Imam of the Hadith scholars, so he could not have meant anything wrong, but rather he meant the correct meanings. One would hope that he would have elaborated and clarified and not left it so ambiguous. Then he goes to the next point. He is not bound by the 6 directions of space like all created beings are. Now Fawzan continues his commentary, and it's only one paragraph. He said, this is somewhat ambiguously brief. If what is meant is the direction of created beings, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends that, as nothing contains him. And if what is meant is the direction of highness, and that he is above all created things, then this is true, and it is wrong to deny it. Perhaps the author means by the 6 dimensions created directions, and not the direction of highness, because the author, rahimahullah, confirms Allah's highness, and he also confirms the istiwa, Allah arising above the throne, al-arsh. All right, so that's Fawzan, and that's a summary of what Ibn Abi al-Iz mentioned in his long explanation of Al-Tahawi. So from this, what do we get out of that? we get two different beliefs. Is that clear from everyone? That the belief of the Ash'aris and Maturidis in explaining what Imam Al-Tahawi said and the belief of the Wahhabiyya Salafiyya is two different things that cannot be combined, cannot be reconciled. Is that point clear? I'm helping you follow through the whole discussion. That's why I'm going slow. So I read both. Are we clear on the difference? Okay. So to summarize that difference, Ahl Sunnah among the Ash'aris and Maturidis, they say Allah exists without a place and a direction. That place and direction are not befitting of Allah and impermissible to attribute to Him. They cannot be attributes of Him. And any verse or hadith whose apparent meaning would make you think that is not what is intended, and it is negated by Allah's statement, Laysa kamithlihi shay. Y'all follow that? So that's one difference. That's Ahl Sunnah. So that's our belief. That's why we say Allah mawjudun bila makan wala jiha. He exists without a place or a direction. And that's how we understand as Ash'aris the statement of Imam Al-Tahawi. La tahwihi jihatu sittu kasair mubtada'at. Right? That he is not contained by the six directions, meaning negated about Allah, direction, and place. That's the Ash'aris and Maturidis. On the other hand, Al-Wahhabiyya, who call themselves a Salafiyya, don't worry, Amir, I want you to understand. What didn't you understand? I'm not asking you what you agree with. What part you didn't understand from the Ash'ari part? You can put it. That's not it's just a discussion because I want you to follow. If you're following, then good. That's all the point. We could discuss which is right or wrong. That's a separate discussion. I want the discussion of understanding first, right? Because a lot of times disagreements never get solved because you don't even understand what's being said. So I'm concentrating on making sure we understand what is being said first. Once we have that, then we can go on to agreement or disagreement, correct or incorrect. I'm talking about from the side of the Ash'aris or the Salafiyya. That's a secondary discussion after we clarify what we're talking about. So once we understand that, now the Salafiyya, Al-Wahhabiyya, what is their belief? As Fawzan mentioned, and Ibn Abi al-Iz mentioned, and this, what Fawzan mentioned, is only a summary of what he said, right? The Salafiyya, they say that Allah is not contained by the six directions, and what they understood from that, as Fawzan articulated, is created directions. That Allah is above all created directions in a direction, but that direction is not created. And that is the direction of ulu, or highness. And that is a location, a place for Allah. That Allah is above the throne, which is above the created directions, because the non-created directions is outside of the world. Is that clear? Does everyone understand that? I'm not asking you, do you agree? I'm asking you, do you understand what he's saying? Because understanding is important before you have if I don't know what you're talking about, shot. So what he's saying, that Allah exists in a place and a direction, but it's outside the world, which all the directions we're talking about are created. And then there isn't a direction and a place that is not created. Do you understand that? Right. There's the answer. So he exists in a non-existent place. Yes, that's what they're saying. They say that Allah exists in a non-existent place. They explicitly say that. Fawzan, if I read in Arabic, Fawzan mentioned that, so did Ibn Abi al-Iz, so did Al-Albany and others. I'm not asking, does it make sense to you? I'm asking, do you understand what they're saying? You can disagree. That's not what we're talking about right now. Do you understand what he's trying to say? Whether you agree or not, do you understand? And do you understand the difference from what he's saying and what the Ash'aris and Maturidis are saying? Do you understand the difference? All right. So since you no, I don't. Okay. There's a difference. One is they're saying that Wahhabiyya, Salafiyya say and confirm that Allah is in a direction of above, Jihatul Ulu. And that is a makan for him, but it is al-makan al-adami. It is a non-existent place. Yes, that's true. That is true. But that's an Ash'ari discussion, Amir. That's true, but that's what the Ash'ari say. That is correct, but that's an Ash'ari position. That's not a Wahhabi Salafi position. If they say that Allah is in a direction, even though that's true, they still say Allah is in a direction. And they say that Jihatul Ulu is not created. Yes. They say highness, the direction of highness, Jihatul Ulu, is not created. Are you following this? I know it seems confusing, but that's why I got to make sure you follow it. I know it's confusing, but the point is not to just argue about positions and you don't understand what's being said. I need you to understand what's being said. Then when I say, okay, this is why the Ash'aris don't consider them Ahl Sunnah. And this is why we don't agree with them. Once you understand what is being said. No, it's not a play of words. No, it's not. They mean literally that Allah is in a place, and that place is in the direction of aboveness, highness. And that is a place for Allah. But that place is a non-existent place. So it doesn't negate this is what they say. So it doesn't negate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is non-resembling his creation because the place is non-existent place. Whatever the heck that means. What they mean by that, now I'm going to show you how they got to that problem. Do we got what they're saying? That's all I want you to understand right now. They mean what they say. It's not a play of words. It's not semantics. It's a belief. It's a conviction, which Ahl Sunnah does not accept at all. Uh-oh, I'm over time. Got to leave you hanging for tomorrow. Right. They say he exists. I won't say dwells because that word can have many meanings. They say he exists in a place that is not created, which is above his creation. And above his creation, there is a non-existent place. Right? That's what the Ibn Abi is said. That's what Fawzan is expressing here. And the Ash'ari say, no, Allah exists without a place. There's no place, not a non-existent place, not a physical place. None of that relates to Allah, and no direction. That's how they understood the statement of Tahawi. What the Salafis saying and the Wahhabis, and that's why he mentions that this is an ambiguous brevity there, right? They said this is kalam mujmal, right? And it needs to be explained. And then you heard Fawzan going on, if you mean this, it means this. If where Ahl Sunnah, they said as it is. Why? Right? Do y'all remember he kept saying? Do you remember when he kept saying that this is ambiguous brevity? This is ambiguous brevity. Do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember that? He says, this contains a kind of ambiguous brevity. And he says that multiple times. Where you notice, Imam al-Ghaznawi never said that. Why do he keep using that term? Because the apparent meaning of Al-Tahawi contradicts what he believes. So he has to explain his belief inside the words of Al-Tahawi, right? So he mentions mujma, right? This is brevity. But why is this a mistake? What is the first line of the creed of Al-Tahawi? Does anyone know? We studied, I told you to memorize. What's the first line? It starts off with the word hadha. This is. What does he say? Imam Al-Tahawi. Anyone remembers? Just give me the first line. Come on, I want to test your memories. What's the first line in the Tahawiyah? Huh? The first line, before you get to jurors. The first line, this is an exposition of the creed of Ahl Sunnah. Right. That's the first line. Reader, can you read that on page number 1?
This is an exposition of the creed, Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, according to the school, madhab of the jurist, fuqaha of the religion, deen.
So here's what Al-Tahawi said. هذا ذكر بيان عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة. Listen to the words. هذا, this is ذكر, a mentioning or an elucidation. Bayan. Bayan is a explanation. So it's not brief. It means it's clear. When something is bayan, right? That's clarifying the point. All of my Salafi brothers, they know the word bayan. I'm not picking on you, Amir, right? So don't think, but you're going to join in. You here, so you got to jump in. When someone is considered a deviant among them, like my brother Abu Muslima, when they considered him off the minhaj, what did he have to do? What did he have to write? A what? Amir, come on, jump in. Or any Salafi who knows this. When someone goes off the minhaj and they get reported to Saudi Arabia, what do the Saudis ask him to write? A what? Come on, give me the word. Let's not run. What is the word in Arabic they asked him to write? The Saudis. And the blacks know this word very well because so many got kicked off the minhaj. And the Saudi sheikhs said he is not to be listened to until he writes a what? Yeah, there you go. Let's be honest. Bayan. What do they mean by bayan? What do they mean by bayan? What is that? You got the word, correct. What do they mean when they say he has to write a bayan? What is he doing? Jump in. Come on, help me out here. I want to show you something. What do they mean by bayan? They told him, you can't, no one take from him, no one do anything. He write a bayan. What is a bayan? What do they mean by that? A clarification. And when they write a bayan, can it be ambiguous and brief? When No. I ain't talking about what he care about. I know Abu Muslim don't care about them. But and he did write a bayan. He did write one. Then he realized they didn't accept it, so he said hell with them. Right now, I'm joking. But, right? So, bayan is it can't be brief. They want in the bayan you to clarify what you believe with no ambiguity and no brief brevity. You have to be clear, right? That's what they want. So, when Al-Tahawi, no, they're not going to accept it. That's why they still threw him off the minhaj after his bayan, because he didn't clarify that he didn't have certain beliefs. So when Imam Al-Tahawi said, هذا ذكر بيان عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة, that's not brief. And it meaning the words he used are clear, his intent. It's not something that is mujmal, as Fawzan and Ibn Abi Iz are trying to insinuate, that Al-Tahawi wasn't clear in what he was saying. So we need to interpret his aqidah for you. When he said, this is bayanu aqidati ahli sunnati wal jama'ah. Not, this is a brief. No, this is bayan. This is clear. It's clarification. It's straightforward. No ambiguity. Right? I'm just making a point so you understand this. So the idea of Ibn Abi al-Iz and Fawzan and Al-Albany and Bin Baz, and as I told you, this is Fawzan. He mentioned it. He said when he mentions all of these, after he mentions, I'll show you the pages, right? So you'll see the words he says. After he mentions the point, let me try to line this up a little bit. There you go. Let's bring it. Okay. Sorry. You'll see the lines up here to the left here, right? Right? When he talks about hudud and all that. And then when you go down to his explanation, 72, right? Or 76, excuse me. It's backwards to me. He said, هذا فيه إجمال. He says, this is ijmal. It's brief. When Al-Tahawi said it is bayan, not ijmal. Why he says ijmal? because what Al-Tahawi is saying contradicts his belief. And then he starts going, if he means this, if you mean this, and he goes through that throughout the text. Do you understand? So he uses an expression that Al-Tahawi did not use to reinterpret, to fit his belief, what Al-Tahawi was saying. I want you to follow. It's very important because we can't just be parrots. We got to understand. Are we clear what happened here? Because I'm going to go to what Al-Albany said as notes to this, and what what Bin Baz said as notes. So I'm going to clarify through their books what they intend without any ambiguity. I'm not going to make it up on them. No, this is their actual books. This is what they said, and this is what they believe. So I don't need to talk to anyone else. Here's their books. Now, if someone else is going to come say, you misunderstood what they're saying, then that means they're reading something else into the text. And they need to clarify that. But it's here, it's available. So we don't got to argue about that. From what we read, what we understood is what they wrote. And then for those that got the English translation, we read English and some of us read Arabic, so we can follow. We understand what they're saying. That's all we're talking about right now, right? Now, when we read our text of the Ash'aris and Maturidiyya, you have what was mentioned by Imam Al-Ghaznawi, right? And he said that Allah is not in a direction and is not in a place. There are two English translations of the Creed of Al-Tahawi that follow the belief of the Ash'aris and Maturidis, right? You're gonna see a lot of books. I'm getting ready to book you to death, right? So, because research, right? This one is a translation of the Creed of Al-Tahawi written by Hamza Yusuf. And this is an explanation of the Creed of Al-Tahawi that was done by the Association of Islamic Charitable Projects, AICP. You know the guys y'all always have a beef with, some of you. They wrote this book. They published it. I want to show you what they said and what Hamza Yusuf said in accordance to what Al-Ghaznawi said. I'll read Hamza Yusuf first, quickly, and I'm going to stop after this. It's on page number 58, right? He said, he is transcendent beyond limbs, ends, supports, components, and instruments, and the six directions do not contain him as they do created things. He said Allah is not contained. He translated with Tahawi and he left it, right? That Allah is not in the six directions. He didn't say it's mujmal. He didn't say Allah is not in the six directions. He left it, right? That's it. And I want you to go back. I want to help you with something. If you have this book, on page 107, he has an ijazah for the book that he got from one of his sheikhs, was Ahmed Jabir Gibran. He is a scholar who was in Saudi Arabia, rahimahullah ta'ala. He passed, right? And he gave Hamza Yusuf an ijazah in this book from him. And Hamza Yusuf puts it. So he mentioned this and he authorized Hamza Yusuf to translate it. Let's see his understanding, what Hamza Yusuf got from him. This is Ahmed Jabir Gibran's al-Makki, al-Yemeni. He's in Mecca, but he was from Yemen originally, right? He died in the year 1425 Hijra, right? 17 years ago, right? Here's his book, At-Ta'liqatu As-Saniyya Ala Matn Al-Aqidah Tahawiyya. This is the Sheikh of Hamza Yusuf. This is his point. That's the line, right? And here's his explanation, right? In it, he quotes Al-Tahawi. He says, "Wal jihatu sittu ma'rufa." The six directions are the famous six directions, right? Then he says, "Wala tahwihi jihatun min al-jihad." He is not encompassed by a direction among the directions. He is not encompassed by anything. He said, "Wal jihatu shay'un min makhluqatihi." And the direction is a thing from among his creation. وَهُوَ مَوْجُودٌ قَبْلَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And he existed before everything. And since the direction is a thing, and it is from the creation, Allah existed before that, then Allah is not a creation. And he is not in a direction. There it is. So we understood from the Sheikh of Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Ahmed Jabir Jubran, that Allah is not in a direction, because direction is a thing from among the creations, and Allah existed before all things, even direction, right? So this is the book, and it matches what Hamza Yusuf mentioned from his Sheikh. That's a clarification of what he believed. Here's his book. He was authorized by this sheikh. This sheikh said Allah is not in direction. Do y'all follow that? So that is the Ash'ari position. I'll close with this last reading because we're getting out of time. We're over time, but so here in their position, Al-Ghaznawi said Allah is without a direction. Sheikh Ahmed Jabir Jubran, he said Allah is without direction. Hamza Yusuf in the English narrated that Allah is not in the direction, right? Then he said, there it is. This is on page 26 of the book. He said, Allah is clear of having boundaries, extremes, sides, organs, and small parts. The six directions do not contain him as they do contain all created things. Explanation. A boundary is an enclosing line or margin. Whatever is bounded is a creation. It needed someone else to specify it with that boundary. That's a had, limit, right? Whatever needs others is not perfect and is not God. Imam Al-Tahawi is one of the Salaf scholars. He is confirming that Allah is not attributed with a boundary. Whoever has extremes, sides, parts, and organs must have a body. This disqualifies him from being God. Hence, Allah is not attributed with having large organs such as limbs or small organs such as a tongue. A body is either above, below, in front of, behind, to the left, or to the right of another body. Every creation is confined to these six primary directions. However, Allah is clear of these directions because he existed before he created them without him being in one or more directions. Y'all follow that? So from where did this translation come from? From the AICP. It came from the explanation of Aqidah Tahawiyya by their Sheikh Abdullah Al-Harari, Idhar al-Aqidah Sunniyya Bishar al-Aqidah Tahawiyya. And in that book, he mentions on page 235, La tahwi al-jihatu sittu kasayir mubtada'at. And there he explains that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in a direction, right? And he mentions there, which we'll come back later as the time. So all of these books explain the position. I know that was a lot. That's why I'm going slow. We'll stop there. We'll come back tomorrow with more. If there's any questions about what I mentioned, please ask. I don't want to get distracted by evidences other than what we're talking about, because that's going to take away from you understanding. I want to make sure you understood what I mentioned. If you didn't understand or you have questions about what I exactly mentioned, please stick there. Learn to stay on course. Don't go all over the place. Please stay on course. We can go over the place once one thing is clearly understood. Go ahead. So, and reader, if you need to disappear, assalamu alaikum. See you tomorrow. Is who Wahhabi? So you took a bathroom, Brooke, and don't mention that's your fault. Right now, stop. I don't know who you're talking about, Baron. Is it clear for everyone, or someone has question? So the summary is the Ash'aris. Hamza Yusuf is not a Wahhabi. Knock it off. Of course, Ibn Abi has had a ijazah for Tahawi, meaning he had a chain of narration. He was learned. He just was wrong in his understanding. He was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah. We clear? Good. MashaAllah. You did good today. Everyone followed. The Shar of Ibn Abi al-Iz al-Hanafi, was he the exception from the Hanafis? Was his work refuted? Both. Yes, yes to both. He was exception. Hanafi is fiqh. He followed the creed. The Hanafis are usually Maturidi, but he followed the creed of Ibn Taymiyyah. So he differed from the Hanafis in that. In fiqh, I don't know his fiqh positions because he's not known for that, but he was Hanafi in madhab. As for his work being refuted by the scholars of his era, of course, that's all these books, Al-Ghaznawi, and I'm going to show you other books tomorrow. They all disagree with him, Hanafi scholars, because the Hanafis were Maturidi. If a non-Wahhabi believes that Allah exists in a non-created place, isn't that shirk? No, it's not shirk. It's wrong, but it's not shirk. Shirk means associating a partner with Allah. That's not shirk. It could be kufr, right? It could be bid'ah. It's not shirk. But that's, y'all always want to stop the microwave Islam, please, right? I love y'all. We got to go step by step. If you want the point, Allah exists without a place, and we cannot ascribe place to Allah. So if you want to get there, that's the end result. How do we get there? Why do people differ? That's another story. But if you just want microwave Islam, Allah exists without a place. That's it. There's your microwave Islam. Not you, Abdul Rahim. I'm just saying in general. Some people are like, just give me what to believe. Allah exists without a place. Now, you don't know why, and then when you run into the person and say Allah is in heaven, right? Most Salafis don't know that they say Allah exists in a non-existent place. Most of them don't know that. They don't realize that. So if they all had ijaza, but all had different understanding, then what does isnad prove other than a chain of narration, but not the correct understanding? No, you can have an ijaza and disagree with all the scholars in the ijaza who conveyed the correct creed, and you can have another creed. Ijaza just says you transmitted something, doesn't tell you understand it. Do you realize that? So the ijaza is affirming the text back to Imam Al-Tahawi, not your false understanding of it. So, for instance, through the ijaza, we know that Imam Al-Tahawi conveyed this book. As for what someone understands, that's a whole nother subject. So everyone follow? Good. Hey, Amir, I'm telling you, once we stop blind following anybody, I'm serious. We are terrible blind followers. Once we stop doing that, start researching, start studying, stop being fanatical about my sheikh, my group, and we study, a lot of things we're going to discover that we didn't know. Because when you're blind following, you only look at what someone is saying without any other things. So for instance, if I just listen to my sheikh and get microwave Islam, I'm not going to have no clue what Albany said, except if he tell me. And if I don't check, I don't even know if he really said that. Do you understand my point? But when I research thoroughly, I see things totally different. So when I'm talking about an issue, as you can see, I'm in the issue. I'm not just quoting. And you'll see tomorrow, I'm going to bring more books and more books just on the Tahawi subject, right? Just on this point. And then now when we talk about any other point, you'll see the work that was done in the research. I'm not just a parrot. I'm not just saying my sheikh said, or my group said. Look, I'm checking. I got dates. I got times. I got who learned from who. I'm on it. That's how we need to be as a people. Not everybody can do all that. I get it. Some people don't know Arabic, so they shot. They can't do it, right? And even those who know Arabic, they might be broke, so they can't get the books. Or they might not have access to the books. Even if they got money, they don't have the connections. So there's a lot of things that prevent us. But those of us who have the ability, we got to do it for the rest of us, right? We got to be able to do the research so that the rest of us will know, so we don't be blind following nobody. I know, yeah, Imam said that. Where did Imam Amin get that from? This book, this page. He had this book, this page, this book, this page, this book, that page. He ain't just make it up. So don't get on his case. We got to go to those books. He said Fawzan said it. He showed us where. He showed us the book. He read it. He gave us an English translation. He said, Ibn Abi Aiz said it. Ibn Abi Al-Iz, Al-Hanafi said it. He showed us the book. He gave us an English translation if it was available. Boom, 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 boom. He said Hamza Yusuf said this. He said where Hamza Yusuf got it. Hamza Yusuf mentioned in this book. He said where he got it from. Here's his sheikh. He gave the book. He showed where the sheikh said it, right? He said the AICP said this. Here's the book that they used. He said where they got it from. He got it from their sheikh. Here's the book here. His sheikh used this reference. Here's the reference of the sheikh. Here, that's research. Do you understand my point? Those who can do that must do that for the rest of us. Maybe everybody doesn't have the ability, but those who have the ability, it's your obligation to help us get out of this mess. You have to do it. So your teachers And I'm going to show you. So this is how I said learning, and I'm glad you're learning. You said I'm Salafi, and you said I don't know that to be the belief. Wallahi, my teacher have taught me that Allah exists without a direction. Your teachers have contradicted the creed of the Salafi if they taught you that. Ibn Abi al-Iz says Allah is in a direction. Al-Albany says Allah is in a direction. Bin Baz says Allah is in a direction. Fawzan says Allah is in a direction. Mukbil says Allah is in a direction. So whoever is teaching you is not teaching you the Salafi creed. And they taught you right. Allah exists without a direction. But that's not the Salafi creed. And say Alhamdulillah, they taught you right. Now, that's why I said we shouldn't jump on our people, because our people, they're not clear on these matters and they need to be taught. So that's why we don't just say Salafi deviant. You got the correct belief. Allah exists without a direction. That's true. That's not a Salafi belief. That's an Ash'ari belief, Maturidi belief. And it's correct. But you see my point? We gotta, and all of us are in that position until we learn. This guy is a comedian. He said you Tom Brady and Sunderland is Drew Brees. You're funny. Okay. 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 No names, but you blame those imams of Ahl Sunnah who know the correct creed but are passive in teaching it. Of course, I do. But, people are people. I mean, people don't want to fight. And they shouldn't have to fight, but that's the world we live in. I just want to practice my deen. I don't want to fight. The pressure is strong. You're outnumbered. All that stuff happens. And, But so I disagree with them. I do blame them, but I understand where they're at. That doesn't mean I accept, but I do understand. Some people don't want to fight. Some people don't want to be in an argument. And it always turns into an argument if people don't discuss. So some people just ain't with all that, right? They're just not with it. And I think it's more important, and as our brother Amir just showed you, it's more important to us to clarify and explain for the benefit of all of us. Instead of just, set tripping, we need to talk and we need to sit down and understand each other, right? And you got to admit when you're mistaken. I'm mistaken. Hey, it's a growth period. We all got to, that's why you research. That's why you study. You're going to learn things you didn't learn. That's life. But we are taught to be arrogant. Unfortunately, we're taught to be arrogant because we're taught not through the way of tasawwuf. So our hearts are all messed up. So we're already taught to be in a gang, not about truth. I'm down. I'm not about the truth. I'm about being down. What about the truth? Right? So when we get to the point where we're about truth, then even when you're mistaken, it doesn't bother you. As Imam Shafi'i said, I never debated the person that accept that Allah would bring the truth on his tongue. Right? I just want the truth. It doesn't matter who say it. I just want the truth. And I'm willing to go through that process to reach the truth. But when you set tripping, shake tripping, all that stuff, when you're an Islamic gangbanger, you don't care what the truth is. You just want your sect to be the winner. And that's why when someone says something about like a Salafi, that I know that's not the Salafi belief, I say, nah, that's not true. Don't say that. Because if we're about truth, don't lie on nobody. That's just what they said. Take it for what it is. Don't fabricate. Tell the truth. And as us, people been lying to us too much, right? Playing games. We got to get tired of that stuff. No, we're not accepting. I remember, I'm going to show my own story quickly. I remember I had teachers who told me don't read books, but all they were doing was reading books, right? They said everything you got to get got to be bit talaqi, from the mouth of the sheikhs. And realistically, the sheikhs ain't reading all these books. They're not doing that. They're reading some books, quoting other books, researching other books, chains of narrations, just to connect the book. They're comparing, they're doing just what I did. And we not knowing, we think every single book, every sheikh is reading every line. That's fantasy island. Ain't nobody doing that. It's a general reading, yes. There's a general reading, yes. And we do read some books, but it's not impossible that we're going to read every single book. Some books are going to be just for research, just for checking and verifying. So I'm not saying everyone has the ability to do that. But then when you start to study, you start to realize, man, you're just copying and pasting and then acting like you a sheikh. And then you're using that for another thing. You want to control people. You want people to call to you. So you hide the information and act like you're doing it. So you won't show me how you reach where you reach. You just give me the conclusion so I can think you the man. And this is cheating. And it doesn't help me when I got to think for myself. Because you just brought me a fish. You didn't tell me how to fish. You just brought me the fish fried and filleted and nice. But I don't know how to do that myself. So if you're not around, I'm in trouble. I might not eat. But if you taught me how to fish, you showed me what goes into it. You told me how to put the worm and how to get the best worm and where to find the fish at. And then you brought me the fish and showed me how to cook. I can survive. My teachers taught me how to research. So with them or without them, I can survive. They taught me how to research. So I know what to find, I know what to look, I know the scholars, I know this, I know the references, so I can help myself. They didn't just say, follow me. That doesn't help me any. It's not going to help you either. So, but if I teach you how to research, I teach you to your capacity, then no one's going to come trick you again. And if they do trick you, it's your fault. Then I can't, you an idiot, right? You letting people trick you. But if I teach you how to study and how to research and how to know who's scholars and who's authority and who's not, no one's going to trick you unless you let them. Barakallahu bikum. Above is a direction. Let me show you. Fawzan. Right? Amir, let me show you. Can you follow my hand, Amir? This is Fawzan, right? Right? I'm over here. Follow my hand, right? You see this? Right? He says, Al-Jihatu Makhluka, right? Here, created directions. You see that? That's called Al-Jihatu Al-Makhluka, created directions, right? Then he says, right here, I'm sorry, Jihatul Ulu, the direction of above, wa annahu fawq al-makhluqat kulliha, right? He said the direction of above, ulu is aboveness, highness, and he put the word before it, jiha, direction. So when you say above is not a direction, No, that's not what he said. Direction of above. And then he separated that from directions, created directions. And he says that the law is in the direction of above. Do you understand? So then he says here, you go over here, he says, al-jihatu makhluqa, la jihat al-ulu. Right? He separates the two. So he said directions. So it's just a misunderstanding. Don't worry. We'll work together and we'll help. You're misunderstanding. That's in their books. So they do affirm a direction. They say that direction's above. And it's above, meaning that it's in a non-created location, place, which is not valid, but they do. But you know me. You can always come see me. You right in my area. And we can sit down and go over it. It's going to be painful to change. But we all love Malcolm X. We all talk about Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, right? It was a point when he had to admit that he was wrong, and he did it. That's what makes him so great. When he realized he was mistaken, he was following something that wasn't right, he had enough integrity and dignity to say, I'm wrong, and to make the appropriate change. I was mistaken. That takes a lot out of a person. I had to do it. I was an Ansar. And you were younger, so you don't remember. I used to walk around the city with my white robe, and I had to admit that was wrong. It happens. That's growth. It's life. I know you're just clinging on to that manner befitting of Allah. Yeah, but some of those are not befitting of Allah. That's the point. But just keep searching. It's all of us. We're on a journey. No one wins until we all in paradise successful, right? It's not about winning. It's about clarifying so we can travel to Allah successfully. That's it, right? We want husnul khatimah, a good ending. All right, barakallahu bikum. May Allah reward you all. Tomorrow, more books, more scholars. So please take good notes. Look at the video, get all these names down, review, so that your notes, so you can follow. Because once I get this, we're going to go build and build and build all the way up to Ramadan. Because after Ramadan, I'm stopping. Once Ramadan starts, I'm not talking about this to after Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Please don't forget me in your dua. Tonight, Sheikh Walid continues on. He's starting to explain the rules of Ramadan tonight at 8 o'clock. Please join his class. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.